I bring a message to all Generation 1 Transformers fans. Roll out!
Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. The Transformers, robots in disguise. The Transformers, more than meets the eye. The Transformers.
Two opposing factions of transforming alien robots engage in a battle that has the fate of Earth in the balance. These two factions are the Autobots and the Decepticons, and they are alien robots from Cybertron. And Victor Caroli is a better narrator than I am.
Now, before I continue with this review, I need to point out that this review is intended to be informative. I will go in detail about its production, the year it was made, etc. The following also will involve me pointing out some things that I have to be honest about. This may potentially upset some Transformers fans of Generation 1. That's not my intention, but I have to be honest whenever I review something. That's just my policy. If you have not seen the original Transformers cartoon, please keep in mind that this show was made in 1984. And kids shows in the 80s, well, let's face it, the animation was not the best part. Fortunately, the show is still watchable despite that it's got average 80s animation. So yes, the animation in the original Transformers cartoon is dated, but it's excusable. The soundtrack by Johnny Douglas and Robert J. Walsh really isn't all that memorable, and that's kind of a given due to the fact that it's an 80s cartoon. 80s cartoons usually were not known for good soundtracks. However, with Transformers, like other 80s cartoons, the Transformers had one good thing in its soundtrack, and that is its theme song. I'm not going to deny that the Transformers theme song is actually one of the more memorable theme songs from the 80s when it comes to, 80s cartoons. So that's one good thing. Although it is very strange to hear sound effects that come right out of Star Wars. Yeah, if you ever decide to watch the original cartoon of Transformers, you are going to hear some sound effects that are from Star Wars. There is a bit of a connection between Star Wars and Transformers, but this review doesn't warrant that. But it will warrant the connection at some point. I will say that the best part about the original cartoon was the first 3 episodes. They introduced the Autobots, they introduced the Decepticons, and actually the setup is done really nicely. I do wish the writing quality were as consistent as the first 3 episodes, because after episode 3, it tends to have this Saturday morning cartoon, formula of, Autobots defeating the Decepticons and, Decepticons getting away with something and etc. What I'm trying to say is that as much as I like the first 3 episodes of the Transformers cartoon, I must admit I'm not a fan of the formulaic Saturday morning cartoon formula. Out of all the 80s cartoons, the original Transformers stood out to me the most when it comes to voice acting. Now, keep in mind that this show was for kids and it was made in 1984, but the voice acting quality actually fits with this one. And one of the shining examples as to why is Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime. Peter Cullen has this voice where he gives Optimus Prime that voice of authority. He makes Optimus sound like a leader. Peter Cullen actually fitted the role. Well, I could even argue that the role was perfect when it came to voice. One of the shining examples as to why I say this is Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime. The way he plays Optimus, He gives Optimus the voice of authority. He sounds like a leader. He sounds like a patriot. He sounds like an American icon. And I say this because Optimus's color scheme is red, white, and blue. Yeah. But another reason why Transformers stands out with the voice acting is also the opposite for Optimus Prime, which is Megatron, who is voiced by Frank Welker. And let's just say Frank Welker has a very, very impressive resume when it comes to voice acting. Although, I really hate to say this, he sounds goofy as Megatron. For example, I know you're hungry. I will feed you after I make Starscream rust in pieces. Sorry. I know that was a terrible Megatron impression. I will not do that again. Now, even though Peter Cullen and Frank Welker are very well known for voicing Optimus Prime and Megatron, I also believe there should be a third voice actor worth mentioning, and that would be Chris Latta. Who is he? He voices Starscream. Now, out of all the characters, I do think that Starscream has a very unique voice. If you have seen Generation 1 Transformers, you know what exactly he sounds like. For example, what do you want? I already fed you! When I lead the Decepticons, I'll make sure Megatron takes care of you instead of me! Nice kitty. You're a very nice kitty. I actually enjoy Starscream. His voice is actually very memorable, and I think it's silly, and it fits. Now, even though I consider the original Transformers to be average at best, there is one factor that is above average, and this factor is definitely more than meets the eye. And I'm referring to the characters. Regardless of Autobots or Decepticons, a good number of Transformers characters are memorable. Optimus Prime and Megatron, definitely memorable. Bumblebee, Jazz of the Autobots, also memorable. Starscream, Soundwave of the Decepticons, they're memorable. And this show even introduces the idea of having the Autobots having Dinobots as their allies, with the Decepticons having Insecticons as their allies. I mean, as silly as some of this sounds, there is some cool ideas with Transformers. And for the most part, what really works about Transformers is that what it really is a toy commercial. Yes, and most of you Transformers fans would have probably already known that Transformers was a toy line. And the show was meant to advertise that toy line. But you want to know something? The concept of the toys is actually really interesting. Because the toys are robots, but you can tinker with them and make them transform into a vehicle, or whatever they transform into. Now, I don't have any Transformers toys, but I do know this for a fact because I've seen a number of people, like, tinkering about with Transformers toys, whether it's YouTube or in person. But seriously, the concept of the toys is something that not many toys do, and that's the genius part about that toy line. Now, sure, even the TV show was somewhat a genius move because it promoted the toy line and it got kids to want to buy the toys. So, that's something kind of cool about the original Transformers cartoon. Sure, it's kind of the same thing even with the Michael Bay movies, but that's another topic I'll save for another day. And in all due respect, the original Transformers cartoon definitely deserves to be looked at, but it's up to you whether you want to watch the rest of the entire show or if you just want to give it a try to see what the original cartoon was like. But I do know one thing, a lot of kids do find it a very fond memory when it came to television back in the 80s. I give the Transformers Season 1
My rating of 5.9 out of 10.
Well, that ends my review of Season 1 of The Transformers. Thank you for watching, and if you like this review and would like to keep track of my upcoming reviews, by all means, feel free to subscribe.